eventually I will see it. I started brush lettering last year, and have just been so immersed in this awesome community, and have been experimenting with a whole lot of different tools. So I wanted to show you in case you were curious and wanted to buy some pens, but weren't sure where to start. So some of you are, this is your first time going into brush lettering, and some of you have been trying it for a while, so I'll try to address kind of both levels. Most of my writing will be on this Rhodia pad today, which I highly recommend. It is so, it takes ink so well, and has a grid which helps you practice. So that's where I'm starting. For a lot of beginners, I have a couple recommendations, and you may not be surprised, but the Tombow Fude and Touch, if it will focus, but it's got an awesome tip that is easy to control. So when you push down and up, it gets really easy to do the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes. And if you're curious about this pad, I ordered it on Amazon. So that's where I've been able to find them. I know that some of the Blick Dick Arts Material store has those as well. So that would be where you'd find those too. So if you want to just write, you know, hi, they're really easy to control. And you can write fairly small with them, where something like a Tombow is a really big tip, which fills up paper so beautifully. For smaller work, it's harder to do. Am I self-taught? I have been doing this more so on my own for the last, since May, right? So I look online, I have some favorite folks that I follow for inspiration. The Postman's Knock is one of my favorites. Pieces Calligraphy on Instagram is one of my favorites, and I highly recommend that you check them out. They do a lot of video tutorials and go through it piece by piece, but the rest of it is just practice. I have never practiced anything daily like this before, and it has made a huge difference in my lettering. So the Postman's Knock, those two are my go-tos for when people are starting out, because they break everything down so well. And then there's also Random Olive. If Olivia is in the scope now, she does awesome stuff and has worksheets. They all have worksheets because they're amazing women. I missed a couple questions, so I'm sorry. Just ask them again and I'll get to them. So this pen, again, it's the hard tip, which makes it easy to control. What can't you see? I'll try to adjust it for you. The links. Okay, sure. If someone else can type that for her, hopefully she can get the links that way. But it's just Pieces Calligraphy and the Postman's Knock and Random Olive. So I've got a couple things that I can show you. You can tell me where you want me to go with that. But there's the Cocoa Eero is a really, really fine one. The brushables that are really fun, and then I've got the Faber-Castell. I've got a whole lot of them, so I can start showing you a couple of these and just do a comparison, just so you can see how they look. The other beginner pen that I absolutely love is the Pentel Sign, because the tip, it's not a real brush, so it writes really smoothly. So I'll write, and you can get the contrast between the thick and the thin strokes. Pretty easily. And they have some fun colors too. I get these, the black one I got from Michael's actually, and then these other fun colored ones I've gotten on jetpens.com or Amazon. They've got some really cool colors as well. But another really great beginner pen. If you're looking to write really small, this is the Zig Coco Eero. And you have to buy the body, which is this blue part, and then the actual ink separately. But it's got a really, really fine tip. I wish I could make it focus better. But it's got a really fine tip. So if you write small, this might work well for you. You can get really thin hairlines on this. Now, if you order these, which you can do on Amazon or JetPens, the tip, people are usually afraid to push down really hard, but if you can see the tip of my pen, you can push down really hard and then the tip actually ends up going like bent this way, but it's totally fine. You're totally fine if you do that. Let's see, which one should I do next? In terms of small, I also really like the Pilot Petite 3. These are baby pens and have a similar tip to the Pentel Sign, and they're smooth. They have really fun colors. They're really bright. So I'll write that out as well. So these are Pilot. I'm trying to keep one eye on my paper and one eye on the chat so I don't miss anything. So these are really fun too. Now, when you start to get into different brush tips, it gets much bigger. So the Zig Brushables is another one of my favorites. People compare these a lot to Tombow because their brushes are big, but I find that they're stiffer than Tombow pens. So they're softer than any of these, but they are more easily managed, I think, than the Tombows. And when you make your downstrokes, they do this beautiful kind of ombre. I don't know what I'm trying to spell, but they do this beautiful shading where it starts off darker and then it gets lighter in the bottom. I just think they're so beautiful. And these are, I've seen them in a lot of places, but I've even gotten them at the university bookstore where I go to school or went to school. So maybe you'll find them around. I don't see these as much as I see the Tombows. So, I mean, if you want to play around with some stuff, they come with 2 colors on each one. The question is, what pad of paper am I using? Right now I'm using the Rhodia grid pad. Comparing these to the clean color, that's one set of pens that I don't have yet. You've just added something to my wish list, so I will probably... Hey, Kara! Welcome! I will probably get those next. That's something that I've been looking into is that. So this is the next, it starts getting softer here, and then you get into the Tombows, which are, I mean, super popular, so maybe you've already seen these, but what I find is that sometimes I get Tombows that have frayed tips, and I don't know how to fix that, but it's really frustrating because they don't have the same kind of ability to do hairlines, so watch out for that if you end up buying them, especially if you buy them at an art supply store where you can buy one at a time. You'll want to be careful that they haven't been sampled and written with a ton. So if you have questions, keep asking them because I keep just focusing on my paper for you. Now, when we get into the the Faber-Castell, for example. These are super fun. You've seen me use like the pens and the artist, just like the marker felt tip pens in my bullet journal, but this is the brush pen, which is a little bigger than the Pentel Sign and much more firm than the brushables or Tombos, and they have some really beautiful colors. So I'll just write, this is my favorite color. Now I'm using the Rhodia grid paper because it doesn't bleed through. There's been very few times where I've seen anything bleed through. So I'll show you in a second. But if you look on the back of this paper I just flipped over, you can see a little bit of ghosting, but other than that, it doesn't really bleed through, which is why I love the Rhodia grid paper. And why I use it actually for one of my journals at home is that it doesn't bleed. As you're starting out, this is why I've been trying to go in like a smaller, firmer tip to the softer tip, is that the harder tips are much easier to learn as a beginner. They're much more easy to manipulate, because then when you get into kind of the bigger brushes, so for example, like the Wink of Luna, these are beautiful brushes, but I got this. I got one of them in June when I had just started, and you can see like it's actual bristles. So I could not handle writing with this pen because it is so long. And so when you push down all the bristles, you have to be very intentional about all of your movements, or it doesn't really work. So it gives you beautiful hairlines, but the brush has to be you kind of have to zhuzh it. I don't know how to spell that, but you really have to just slowly work your way. Oh, do I have an online workshop? I currently don't, but I would love to start one. I'm a teacher in real life, so it's something that really appeals to me. Maybe someday. Someday, not today. So that is that Kuretake Wink of Luna. And then I also just got these Sai watercolor brush pens that they have like bristles on the brush. And so again, it's one of those things where if I would have gotten this last May, I would not have been able to do anything with them because they are real bristles. So again, you have to go really slowly for the color to come out consistently, because if I go too fast, for example, sometimes the brushes, it'll splay out and then you'll get gaps in the downstroke. But I love these. If you're looking for a new pen to try, I would absolutely recommend these. The colors are so vibrant, and I haven't played around with blending them together or anything, but because they're watercolor pens, I'm really interested in playing around with that. But these are relatively new to me, so I've just been mastering slowing down and writing with them. Someone asked me what level I teach. I teach college students, and it's work that I really, really love. So maybe I'll teach people how to letter sometime too. Oh, so many teachers in here. I love that. I'm going to be doing a post on how I use my planner as a teacher too, so look forward to that. And the last kind of one that I'll show you is the Copic sketch. These ones are the hardest for me. I haven't played around with these too much. I feel like I'm not worthy of this pen, but they've got a brush tip that I've been practicing a little bit with. I feel like there's so many things that I have yet to unlock with this tip. So if anybody has recommendations for resources on this, I would love to hear that. So I quickly just went through all of my brush pens. For those of you who are just joining us, I recommend for beginners to start with a harder tip, something like the Tombow Fude and Touch. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. As well as the Pentel Sign, because their tips are just super easy to manage. You can get that contrast with a thin upstroke and the thick downstroke pretty easily. And then you want to move into something like these brushables. because the tips are easy to use and control. These are just really fun if you want to write small. Am I missing questions? I haven't been looking at the screen for the chat. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask, and I will answer to the best I can if you want to see something again. If you are new to Periscope, something that you can do is you can tap on the side to give someone hearts. I don't really know why people want to collect as many hearts as they can, but it kind of just shows that you're listening and you enjoy what you're seeing. And then the camera is just for when I think people do screenshots. So that's cool. If they want to keep track of something, they'll do a screenshot. In terms of the Tombow feathering, I think that has to do with your grip, because my grip in the past hasn't been very good. And when I finally learned from Charisse, who's piecescalligraphy.com, that I have to hold the pen a certain way. So if you take the pen, brush pens, people want to write straight down. Do not do that. You have to kind of write with an angle to the page, and that's where you can kind of gently touch the tip of the marker to the page, and so you can just do really thin upstrokes, and then at an angle you get the widest part of the brush and you can push down. So you don't ever want to write on straight on like you would a normal pen or a marker. You want to hold it to the side. So maybe that's why some of my old brush pens were feathering, but for others who are asking about the clean color, that's a pen that I don't have yet. So I'm hoping to snag that in the next couple months and play around with that too. I've been trying to master a couple of these other ones before I move on to that. Brush pens versus dip pens. I know so many people hold the pen in the wrong way, and it kind of wears them down, but I started doing brush pens first to get more familiar with the lettering and letter forms before I went to dip pens. If you haven't done dip calligraphy before, it's that very traditional with the metal nib, and you dip the ink and stuff. I did brush pens first so I can get comfortable with varying the pressure up and down before I went to the dip pen. And now that made it more familiar for me to use the dip calligraphy. I know I missed so many other questions. When I started, my mom showed me lettering when I was younger, and I have always kind of played around with drawing and doodling letters and headers, and then I started doing this more formally last May, because I said to my husband, I was like, I don't think I have any hobbies. And then I kind of dove into this world and started practicing and getting involved with the lettering community on Instagram, and I've not turned back since. Lefties. There's so many awesome resources for left-handed calligraphers. I know that makes it really challenging, but one off the top of my head, hopefully you can read this. Her name is Lauren, and she is at Ren Made Calligraphy. She is a master lefty and gives you some really awesome tips as to how to write with a left hand. And then there's other folks too that do lefty tips. I know that Charisse features some tips on her blog, piecescalligraphy.com, about left-handed calligraphy tips, so that you can, avoid the ink smearing and other challenges of being a lefty. I'll take a couple more questions before I take off, because I don't want to take too much of your time, but watercolor brush pens, good for hand lettering. So this is my only watercolor brush pen, and then I also have the Aquash watercolor or water brush, and I haven't played around with that too much, but I've seen so many people use the water brush for beautiful calligraphy, brush calligraphy. And then this I love so far because the colors are so vibrant, but I haven't tried doing anything like mixing the colors together. So I'll get back to you on that in a future scope. All right, I'll take one or two more questions and then I will let you get on with your weekend. Yeah, of course. You got what you needed? Are you ordering any specific pen now that you've kind of seen them in action? Oh, I'm glad that you thought it was great. You're gonna order all of them. Yeah, I know. This is the danger, right? You start seeing them being used and you're like, oh, great. Um, Resources for newbies. Check out my blog. It's on my profile, prettyprintsandpaper.com. And on there, I have a list of resources for new calligraphers. It's called Beginning Hand Lettering. So go ahead and take a peek at that. I list out a bunch of my favorite starting materials. I'll do another post with the video. It's prettyprintsandpaper.com. And I'll do another post with the links to the pens that I used today, just so that you guys can have an easy, quick reference for those, and I don't want you to lose any of the materials. Yes, that's right, prettyprintsandpaper.com. Thank you. Um, Thank you too. I'm on YouTube and now I'm on Periscope, so I'm planning on doing some more video tutorials to help you learn some new techniques. I'm closer to that learning experience, so hopefully I can share some cool tips for you guys. If you have other questions or things you want to learn how to do in the future, let me know. I will probably do a scope on it if you want. Well, thank you all for joining me. I hope it was useful. And I'll hopefully catch this. I am Pretty Prince Paper on YouTube.com.